Welcome back and happy Wednesday. This week we're focusing on 5 assumptions you need to question so you can get better. And this is a follow-up to the symptoms we were talking about last week. We're taking each one of those 5 symptoms and now we're looking at the assumptions that underlie each of those. And we're going to look to discern between fact and fiction on these assumptions. Yesterday, we challenged our assumption that says, I should have known better. And today we're going to be talking about the assumption that sucks the passion from our perspective, leaving us sort of lackluster and trudging through our days. And that assumption, drum roll please, is I'm justified in giving up. And I don't know about you, Wendy, but that one just kind of smacks me between the eyes.
Well, once you get to a certain age, it's always easy to say, well, it's just too late for me, or too many things have happened and I'm too broken. And depending on what type of the abuse was, I mean, maybe you worked at a job for a year where you had a narcissistic boss and you were able to get away. Maybe you were married to a narcissist for 20 years. And so there's a difference in how broken you can feel and how quickly you got away and how much damage was done. And depending on how much damage was done, you can feel very justified in saying, well, like we just said, I'm too broken. Nothing's going to change anyway. I'm tired. In fact, I'm not just tired. I'm exhausted. Or it's not worth it. I know what I'm going to have to do to fix all this. It's not worth it. Sadly, sometimes that leads into, well, I'm not worth it. Maybe somebody else would be, but I'm not. I'm trapped. Like we said before, it's too late. And all those can fuel that very false assumption that says, well, it's okay for me to give up. It's actually right for me to give up. I'm completely justified.
Right. And you mentioned about like once we're a little bit older going through this, and we see that a lot of times, you know, women in their 40s, women in their 50s, women in their 60s, who they spent a lot of years trying to make something work. And it was just impossible. And they finally come to that conclusion. You know, if it was with a spouse, either the spouse leaves and has someone else, another woman, or they finally said, I have exhausted 10 times over every option that I could have come up with to try to make this work, and nothing worked. And I just came to the conclusion that I had to pull the tooth, you know, or maybe it was a parent and we reached the point where, you know, the parent has passed away or whatever. So point being, maybe that relationship is gone and here we are. And some opportunity is presented before us. Or what I notice a lot of times with women I'm working with, when we start working through this stuff, when we look toward the future and think about like what is possible for you, they start to think, well, it's too late for me. It's too late. So I just need to lower my bar and I just need to settle right here. And that's good enough.
A lot of times the women listening to us now have made huge gains.
Yes.
That relationship has been in the rearview mirror for 5 years or 10 years, and they have made huge gains. And you get to the point where you feel like this works. Like I'm justified in just being happy with just this level of accomplishment or relationships or happiness in life. It depends exactly on what you're looking at. But a lot of times it's just, I'm justified in having only worked this hard and gotten this far. So it doesn't mean that nothing's better. A lot of times, a lot of things are better, but there's still a gap between where you are and what you're capable of, or what God is calling you to, or what you're dreaming of. And this assumption gets you stuck in that middle area of, this is just good enough. Just good enough.
Yes. And you know, this assumption in particular, just like, that's why I said it hits me between the eyes, because this assumption, I believe, is a lie from the pit of hell. Because there's something that each one of us has a calling placed on us, our position in the kingdom of impact, a position of impact that we're supposed to have. And if we handle what we've been through in a right way, I mean, God says that he takes all things and he works it together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. So there's something we're called forward to. And this assumption keeps us going, nah, I'm just going to park it right here. And that's enough. So we never quite take our place of what could be for us, that could be amazing.
Yes. And the lie is kind of easy to believe because you've already come a certain distance. You've already done a certain amount. Maybe things really aren't horrible. They're not great, but they're not horrible, or they're not what they could be. And it's very easy to say this is good enough. And that can be a lie, a complete lie.
Absolutely.
Like you said, a lie actually from the pit of hell, because it stops you from where God is leading. It stops you from using the gifts he has put in your life and in your heart. It stops you from producing the fruit you could be producing.
Right. And we know that we have a spiritual enemy that, he prowls around like a lion, seeking who he can destroy, that he steals, kills, and destroys. Well, if we've been able to maintain our faith all the way to this point, and he wasn't able to take out our faith by direct frontal assault, or he's tried to attack our minds or whatever, but what he can do is bring us to the point of gradually accepting I'm too old, it's too late for me, or I'm too exhausted, I'm not enough, I'm too much, whatever it is, where we won't do that, then ultimately we're letting him win. And that fires me up when I start thinking about that, because it fires me up to fight against that and to work with women to fight against that, because there's so much better waiting for them.
Well, why stop halfway?
Yeah.
Why stop halfway? It doesn't make any sense when you really think about it, to say, I have so much more to do and give and experience and offer up to God, and I'm just going to stop here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we want to challenge you to ponder this. Think about what would be possible if you didn't give up. And along with that, what little course correction could you take in your thinking, or the way you respond, how you be through life? What little course correction in your lifestyle could create that butterfly effect? And as we always talk about, you've heard us so far talking about that 1% improvement. We're talking about this sort of butterfly effect that over time, it moves you onto a different path. So if you're feeling exhausted right now, what little course correction could recapture some energy? There's a whole lot we could talk about that we don't have time to get into today, but we just want to get the wheels turning.
Until you figure out what it is for you, you're not exactly sure which thing to experiment with or try.
Right.
That's why we're talking about taking notes on what you're doing and what your assumptions are now, because this would be a great place again to go, okay, so what happened if I didn't give up?
Right.
What little course correction, even if you don't make it, even if you're tired and you're like, well, I could do this. If you wrote it down, that counts as your 1%. You noticed something and you wrote it down, and now you have something to try.
Exactly. Scripture says that a people without a vision perish. So when we take this assumption, when we say, I am justified in giving up, and we might not have phrased it to ourselves that way.
Probably didn't.
Probably slid into it and just kind of like, I don't have the energy. That's a big one I hear all the time. I just don't have the energy. It's just not worth it to me. I don't have the energy. But what would be possible if you didn't give up? Because if we just slide into that mode, then we're living small again. We're living small. So we came all this way, like you were saying, Wendy, we came all this way. We overcame this. We made it through the narcissist. We're on the other side, and we get there, and there's a beautiful future right over the horizon waiting for us. But we're just going to stop and sit in this mud puddle right here.
Yeah.
It's just, it breaks my heart.
Yeah. Don't pitch a tent halfway when there's a castle waiting for you over the mountain.
And it's interesting that you said about pitch a tent. That's so true. I had a friend of mine and I, we were both dealing with narcissistic abuse and walking through things. And whenever just God seemed to work it out. So when one of us was up, the other one was down, and vice versa. So we were never both down at the same time. And so we made this little joke between us, and we said, okay, we're walking through a desert right now, and it's freaking hard doing this. But we declared the desert was a no camping zone.
Yes.
And so if we caught one of ourselves pitching a tent, an attitude or whatever, we would say, it's a no camping zone, pack up a tent. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
And move forward. And that's the attitude that we need to take, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. So hope this poked you a little bit, because that's what we're trying to do. And this one especially, by asking what would be possible if I didn't give up, if I didn't quit? What would be possible if you need to rephrase it? What would be possible if I did have the energy? That is taking that false assumption and it's just poking it. It's letting the air out of it so it loses its power over us. That's what we're getting to, right? So join us again tomorrow as we challenge the false assumption that keeps us wound too tight all the time. All right. And remember, we do encourage you to partner with God, invite Him into this process, press into Him, seek Him out. And as you do that, expect Him to do immeasurably more than you asked or hoped for. Take Him at His word with that. We're with you on this journey. We're going to walk with you. We're going to provide some guidance. We're going to provide some wisdom, and we are definitely going to challenge you to grow because we know there is better for you out there. So remember that 1% improvement that we talked about, and also be sure to like and subscribe, share this episode with others that you think could benefit with it. You'll also find some links to some helpful resources in the description, and feel free to email us at hello@AnnetteChesney.com if you've got questions or you've got something you want to share. But keep going because your best is yet to come. We'll see you tomorrow.